Now, the Nobel Peace Prize for this year has been awarded to two journalists, Maria Ressa of the Philippines and Dmitry Muratov in Russia.
Ms. Ressa and Mr. Muratov are receiving the Peace Prize for their courageous fight for freedom of expression in the Philippines and in Russia. At the same time, they are representatives of all journalists who stand up for this ideal in a world in which democracy and freedom of the press face increasingly adverse conditions.
Well, let's bring in our Asia correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, who is in Bangkok, and Diana Magnay, who is in Moscow for us. Siobhan, to you first. Maria Ressa, a journalist in the Philippines. I've met her. She's fearless, isn't she, scrutinising the government of Rodrigo Duterte. Just tell us a bit more about her.
Well, Sam, you know all too well how fearless she is. She's a real firecracker. She's a veteran journalist, veteran correspondent, and in 2012, she co-founded the online news site Rappler. But really, the pressure that she's been facing in the Philippines over the last few years intensified following the election of Rodrigo Duterte, and her, with the Rappler staff, did intensive investigations into extrajudicial killings, human rights abuses linked to Duterte's war on drugs, also exposing what she said was an online troll army, basically, which was pushing fake news around his presidency. And since then, both her and the Rappler staff have faced more than a dozen legal cases. Yet it hasn't deterred her. She's continued to fight for freedom of the press. And it's interesting that today, when she was actually getting that award, she was online doing an online forum, a chat about freedom of the press. And you see her suddenly saying, "Oh, someone's calling me." A few minutes she comes back and she just says that she's speechless, that it just shows how tough it is, and that this is for all of the other journalists in the Philippines. And I think many journalists in the Philippines will be buoyed by this, because many are reporting that it's becoming extremely hard for them to do their job. And this was her message to them.
Journalism has never been as important as it is today, and yet it is so difficult to do the job that we had set out. In order to keep doing what we're doing, keep the North Star ahead of you. You know, you protect the facts. You hold power to account. You exercise the rights that is in the Philippine Constitution. That's what we did, and that's what we'll keep doing.
Well, she's keeping on going, isn't she? Diana, let's talk about the other journalist recipient, the editor of an independent Russian newspaper, which has seen several of its journalists killed.
That's right. He's editor-in-chief of Novaya Gazeta, which is really the most well-known, longest established independent newspaper, and pretty much the only independent outlet that has still not been labelled a foreign agent in what has, over the last few months, been a real escalating crackdown on the freedom of the press here in Russia. And as you said, Novaya Gazeta, it was established in 1993, and Dmitry Muratov was one of its founders back in the day, when they really didn't have much beyond a couple of computers and a few seats. And interestingly, in quite a nice symmetry, Mikhail Gorbachev, who owns part of Novaya Gazeta, donated part of his Nobel Peace Prize money to Novaya Gazeta as it was getting going, to get it going. In that time, 6 of Novaya Gazeta's journalists have been killed doing their work, which has been a really fearless endeavour to expose corruption, to expose human rights abuses. Yesterday marked the 15th anniversary of probably the most famous of those reporters, Anna Politkovskaya's murder here in Moscow. She had been probing for a long time human rights abuses in Chechnya, and that 15-year mark marks the expiration of the statute of limitations on her murder. No one has ever been held accountable. And we heard today from Dmitry Muratov that this prize for him is not just for him. It is for all of those who've died defending all of our right to freedom of expression. And he also said that he was going to give some of that prize money to children with spinal muscular dystrophy, and also to journalistic activities, and that he would do what he could to fight for all those other outlets who've been called foreign agents. Because just as in the Philippines, it really is a very, very tough time for independent journalism in Russia. The authorities are very much cracking down on it. Every Friday, practically, we've seen more media outlets named foreign agents. It'll be interesting to see if Novaya Gazeta manages to escape that label. Today, the Kremlin commented on his award and called him a talented, courageous journalist. I don't think that is a label that Mr. Muratov is particularly going to care about what the Kremlin says, because, as the committee said, he has stood fearlessly and championed independence and a continuation of holding the government to account and exposing abuses of the regime throughout his more than 20-year career at a very, very difficult time in Russia. And I struggle to think of any other outlet, journalistic outlet in the world, which has seen 6 of its reporters killed. And I think that shows you just the kind of work that Novaya Gazeta does here.
OK, Diana in Moscow, Siobhan in Bangkok. Thank you very much. The Nobel Peace Prize this year, just to reiterate, awarded to 2 journalists, Maria Ressa of the Philippines and Dmitry Muratov in Russia.